Thank you so much for taking time for the interview. And I want to start with the album, of course. Congratulations! It's one of my favorites of this year.
Oh,
It
thank
was
you.
yeah, it was really like love at first sight for me. It's an amazing album. So of course, I want to ask about the recording process. So because for me the album flows easily. So it's very, with some albums I have a hard time like getting into it, but with this one it was really like everything flows so easily. So what I wanted to ask was, how did the ideas evolve? Was it a spontaneous process for you, or did you have ideas all around the place and you have to collect them? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Uh, no, it was pretty much a flow. I
Mm-hmm.
had started sketching ideas per song in January of 2020, and I the pandemic did not affect me because I recorded everything myself,
Mm-hmm.
and with the exception of the guitar solos. So I wrote a bunch of like sketches, like rough ideas, but not the whole record. And I then but when we got into like late spring, I kind of stopped and took like 4 months off because I got involved in some other things. And then in the fall of October 2020, I started resuming writing. I opened everything up. I started listening and reviewing, and that's how I work. Sometimes ideas need to wait, and then
Mm-hmm.
they'll come out all at once. And I wrote like a bunch of songs in those 2 months also, while I pretty much record as I write. And it was kind of like I would focus on the idea, and I knew that this music would be for this song, and it wasn't like stuff scattered everywhere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, I take my I'm the kind of artist that will not force things. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to push myself and say, well, I must finish this song today. I must write a song today. If it's there and the mood is right and the flow is right and the story opens up to me,
Mm-hmm.
um, then I go with the flow. If I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall, I will just walk away for a little while and maybe take a few weeks or a few months off from that song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I make the realization that, well, this isn't good enough. I'm not going to use it. Although that didn't really happen on this last record. Pretty much I used just about everything. Everything that was coming out, I was liking. Um, and that was kind of how it went. And as I record the music and as I work on the music and as I sit back and listen to the music, I will jot down lyrics, titles will come to my mind, the story starts opening up to me, or say sometimes I'll watch something on TV or a movie or
Mm-hmm.
read
Mm-hmm.
something and it puts an idea and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to elaborate on this story, or I'm going to spin off of this or that. um I like looking at songs kind of like short movies also, like cinematically. So I actually visualize music
Mm-hmm.
in my mind before I actually put it down, or I'll visualize the story playing out like a movie in my mind before I sometimes say, well, this is it.
Yeah, yeah, that's very obvious actually. That was exactly my question, because I could really feel the spontaneity in the song, the flow in the songs, and this really makes sense with how you recorded and how you wrote the songs. What was the? I mean, there are many different. I mean, it's of course a pale horse named Dead sound for sure. But what was, from your perspective, the difference compared to the previous album with this album? Like maybe songwriting wise, recording wise.
Well, the difference was I wrote always all the music on every album,
Mm-hmm.
but the difference was with this record from the other ones was this record I did entirely myself, as far
Mm-hmm.
as production, engineering, recording, mixing. I always, on the previous record, had a partner. I would
Mm-hmm.
always be with like one other person that we would co-produce or
Mm-hmm.
co-mix and record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to be reached a point where I was just going to do everything myself completely. Aside from being multi-instrumentalist and playing instruments myself, I wanted to have full control. And I always felt a little bit like the last album, for example, I was dissatisfied because when you work with another person, you have to play politics. You have to sometimes agree to keep the peace or to keep things moving along. And especially when you have a deadline,
Yeah.
you kind of sometimes agree to things that later on kind of bite you in the butt, you know, and you're like, why did I go along with that?
Yeah.
So I knew as I knew I was going to do this record entirely myself. I was pretty much by myself the whole time anyway, because again, the pandemic, I didn't get together with anybody. There was some, you know, for a lineup changes, who's in the band, who's not in the band, all this stuff. And basically I worked hand in hand with, you know, Joe Taylor and Eddie Heedles would send me the guitar solos when I would send them the music. I would, you know, refer to Joe and say, hey, what do you think? How's it sounding to you so far? And he would give me sometimes an opinion, but I worked hand in hand also with our mastering engineer, who was, or Applebaum was the mastering engineer that finished the record to be for mastering, to make the vinyl and CDs. And he was great. He was a great help because he also gave me an objective opinion and would say, you know, he would give me sometimes a little bit of suggestions. So I was really thrilled because it was one of the things I wanted to do in my life, whether it was the end or not in my life. I wanted to say, well, this is the record I did entirely myself, because I knew if I did what I was feeling inside, I knew I had to do it myself to achieve this great sounding album, right?
Yeah.
And for once, I believed 110% in everything I was doing. And the end result was everybody was like, loves the way it sounds. They like the music. They like you know, and again, I've always wrote all the songs on every record, but this time I kind of had a little bit of an approach again to not be, I did use some spontaneity. Like, for example, the song Reflections of the Dead. I just had my system open and I just picked up the guitar and I just started playing. All of a sudden these two parts came out and I was like, okay, super doom, super slow. I'm just going to leave it be. I'm not going to be overcomplicated, not too much stuff going on. And then the melody came to me and then the title came to me. And I was like, as soon as I had that title, Reflections of the Dead, that just created the rest of the lyrics, basically. Because sometimes a great title, which is a lot of times what I have first, like I'll create a working title. Like I'll come up with a stupid name, right? Like I'll like this, you know, just to have everything. So I know what's what in my hard drive. But a lot of times then, sometimes those names then turn into another name later on, and then that inspires the lyrics and becomes the story, like the title of a book. Sometimes people write the book first, then have the title. Sometimes they have the title first, and that creates the rest of the book. So there was a lot of that on this record. Same thing with Shards of Glass. Shards of Glass was I picked up the guitar and the verse and the chorus instantly came out in 5 minutes, and I was going through some turmoil, as always, with family, and the song is basically about a sibling. And I started pouring myself into that emotion, and so the mood and the lyrics and the words and the subject matter came out for that song pretty quickly. Where I had come up with those parts, and then like I had a verse already written down, like I was just scribbling words, because I keep a notebook next to my desk and I write things by hand. I'll type later. But I do things kind of like the old way. I write things down, so I think that was gave the record a sense of not being chained down or tied down or restricted. There's a sense of freedom on this record.
Definitely. Yeah.
Same thing like, you know, Two-Headed Snake. That riff, it's a very easy part, but it's so retro and vintage sounding, like old Black Sabbath. And so it is, I'm a true believer that the simplest things in the world always turn out to be the best, because this is then something across the board people can relate to. You know, so I was just not like, some musicians sit there and they're like, well, this music's got to be complicated. You know, I got to make the complicated piece of music and all this progressive type of music, which is great. It has its own thing, but it's just, to me, it's a little too much. I try to relate to the listener as easily as possible, make them feel an emotion and pull
Yes,
them
exactly.
and pull them into a moment in their mind, like a movie, you know, and then when they,
Definitely.
you know, so.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, sometimes there's no need for fancy things. It's great, but sometimes the simple stuff is just enough. I agree with
Simple is
that,
always
definitely.
best.
Yes,
Simple,
yes.
it's the same with cooking. It's the
Yeah,
same with
that's true.
it's the same with a lot of things, and I too am guilty of overcomplicating life too. So but
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
to follow my own advice sometimes too. But with music, I try to keep
Mhm.
it. You know, it's simple, but there is a lot of there is things in the details that you know are hidden. You know,
Yeah,
too. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. You talked about the lyrics a bit. So can you say that the songs are based entirely on your personal experiences because you were involved yourself, or was it also general?
I kind of broke out a little bit
Mhm,
about being every song too personal. Um, you know, I delved into some biblical stuff.
mhm,
You know, like Cast Out from the Sky is more or less the story about how the angel Lucifer got banished from heaven and sent to
mhm,
earth. I'm a big fan of all that stuff. I like all that stuff. You
mhm,
know, I
mhm.
really feel that, you know, to be one with God, you have to be one with the devil.
Yes.
There's the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
There's the
Light
dark
and
and
the
the light.
dark.
The
Yeah.
universe operates in balance.
Yeah.
You can't be all the one way. You can't say I believe in God, but I don't believe in something else, because
Mhm,
God would not exist without, you know, good would not exist without evil, and darkness would
mhm,
not exist without
mhm,
light. So I'm a big believer in this kind of, maybe it's a little bit of a pagan mentality, but
mhm.
um so that's one song, and then there's that the other song, Lucifer's Son, which is
Yeah.
kind of like a spin-off of, like, in a weird way, about what's going on in humanity right now, and how
Mhm,
we're just not learning from the past. We're trying to erase the past in many ways.
mhm,
We're destined to burn in his son. I kind of created, like instead of saying we're going to burn in hell, we're going to burn in the
mhm,
sun,
mhm.
which is his son. Kind of like it's a spin-off. I like mixing factual with
Mhm.
non-factual. So I'll it's me creating stories, you know,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
partially. Um, and so I did stuff like that. And then there's some songs that, yeah, they do touch on some personal stuff, where there'll be like a sliver of truth that was part of my life or someone's life, and then I take it and I spin off on that. Um, Two-Headed Snake was about my experience on being put under anesthesia.
Oh, yeah, I
Uh,
want to ask about that. Yeah. Mhm. I read about it. I was a bit curious.
well, it was basically like the coolest thing in the world. I never was put under. So they woke me up and I felt like I was sleeping for days. And I
Yeah. Yeah.
sleep well, I have insomnia all the time. So it felt great. And I was like, how long was I out? They were like, oh, 12 minutes. And I'm like, 12
Yeah.
minutes? I was sleeping for 3 days. And then it turns out, you know, this anesthetic called propofol, it was the same drug that Michael Jackson was having his doctor give him every night. And eventually he died from overdosing on propofol.
Oh,
So that spun off in my mind. And I was like, wow, how trippy is that? This guy was like, he was getting his hands on this stuff so he could
yeah.
sleep. And then me being like, I mean, I'm sober now, but I used to be a big fan of, like, you know, getting high and all this stuff back
Mhm,
in the day when I
mhm.
was younger. So I kind of took a spin off of kind of being in this like psychedelic world. There's no meaning to write, you know, I'm riding a two-headed snake. It's like I'm just on this big snake with two heads and I'm flying through the sky, and you know, I'm riding a magic carpet ride and I'm bugging out and I'm tripping. And it really was just a spin-off of a 70s psychedelic type of vibe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of had fun with it. I knew I had to create some beat. Like I knew I wanted to be creative, but I didn't want to write about always woe is me. And I was like, you know, this, and the thing is the funny thing is that the Two-Headed Snake was my working title. Just like I said earlier, sometimes I come up with stupid
Mhm,
working titles
mhm.
to have some identity on my hard drive. So I was just like, well, I'm going to call this Two-Headed Snake. Has no relevance to anything. I don't know what it means, but right now we're just going to call this working song that I'm working on called Two-Headed Snake. And then it just kind of stuck with it. And I was just like, you know, I'm just going to leave that title because people aren't going to know what the hell I'm talking about. Uh, you know, and it even like, it was funny because even my wife was like, she's like, who's the two-headed snake? I'm like, nobody. I made it up, you know, I made it up. And I just kind of I have a very big imagination when it comes to just coming up with
That's
stuff.
great. Yeah. Yeah.
And very prolific in that way. So I can make up a lot of stuff on the fly. So I just went with it. And I was like, all right, yeah, man, it's this dude that's like high out of his mind on anesthesia, riding a snake through the sky. And
Yeah.
you know, we're having a good time.
Yeah, I know. So no, but I know it's from my dad. He was in a surgery, and he also was under anesthesia. He said the exact same thing. He thought that he was like sleep for days, but it was only like an hour or so, and he had the most intense dreams ever. Like
Right,
it
it's
was
bugged
very,
out.
yeah,
It
very
bugs me
interesting.
out.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
What were the challenges with this album, recording the album, or in general, or were there any, like in general? Okay, you said the pandemic didn't affect in general, but were there any challenges that you faced this time?
No, the challenges for me was having time because I'm a real busy guy. I don't just do music. I have a family. I have three daughters. You know, I have a lot of property maintenance to do, a lot of work to do on the cutting the land and the grass and the maintaining that. Then I'm also one of my hobbies is working on old cars, and and so I'm always working on cars. I'm into that, and I'm one of these types of people that I can't sit still. I can't do one thing.
Okay.
I
Always,
have like 12 things.
always on the move.
I make my life so complicated. Like I said, simple is best, but see, I don't listen to myself.
Yes.
And so I think the challenges for me is always having time. I would work on the record at like nighttime, you know, like 2 hours here, 2 hours there. You know, I also because of the pandemic, I had started working again for my town, and I had to do what I had to do because I'm a family man and I have to take care of my kids. And you know, money's not always forever with music. Music is like this. So it's unrealistic to think that, like, some people think we're all rich or something. It's like, yeah, maybe 10 years ago I was all only music, but you know, things change in life. And then, you know, I send my daughter to private school now. And so things cost money. So I try to make extra money whenever I can, to be honest with you. I'm humble enough to say that I'm not, you know, I don't have anything to hide. Time.
Yeah.
I'd like to start. I wish I could have the you know, I want to start. I messed with some ideas. I want to record some new ideas now that the winter's coming, because that's why I took, like, with this record, this summer off. I took like 4 months off because summer's kind of weird with trying to create this doom and gloom. But the fall,
does darkness inspire you? The dark weather?
Yes.
I was gonna ask that. Yeah, I guess
fall and winter, like winter when there's a lot of snow outside and you can't go nowhere and you're stuck. That to me is inspiring, to just sit and work on ideas. Yeah. And again, it's a mood thing. So sometimes it's like hitting gold. And then sometimes it's like, okay, it's, you know, I'm not really getting anywhere. I'll leave it alone, you know? So a lot of times I'll sit down, I'll record a part or two, and I'll leave it alone, come back, you know, maybe a few days later or a few months later. And so I build up the collection like that. And then before you know it, these parts, these things, they start turning into songs as well. And then there's the ones that come out instantly. So it's black and white. Like I said, Shards of Glass, Reflections of the Dead, those parts came out right away, 5 minutes. And then there's some stuff that sits for a few weeks or a few months and takes time. And sometimes you have to say, you know what, I'm gonna let it go. Yeah. Or you come back to it with a fresh mind and it's like, wow, oh man, this is what I was missing. Oh, great. You know, now I can finish the song, you know, it's perfect, you know, and everything. There's no rhyme or reason, as the saying goes. For me. Yeah. Speaking of songs, so my favorite is Lucifer's Son. Actually, I really love that song.
It's like
Thank
on
you.
repeat for me. What is like from the album? What is the song that you can recommend as a highlight of the album, or the song that you find the closest to your heart, so to speak? Maybe it's a
Slave
personal
to the Master.
slave. Yeah, that's also my other favorite.
Slave
Okay.
to the Master. It kind of relates to the personal battle of trying to achieve success and never, and even when you have success, which could mean many things. Success could mean a beautiful family, or that you've done like monumental records in your past, but you're still. It's kind of about my inner turmoil with never feeling like I've achieved enough, or or chasing the dream and still chasing it, even though you've lived it. And I gotta say, I'm pretty fortunate because I was able to work with, create two very monumental bands from New York. At the same time, I did so much touring. I met so many people. I toured with so many bands in my life that it's like, well, I really shouldn't complain, because there's some people, are musicians that never
achieve that.
never do anything, and or achieve anything on a global scale. So that song kind of touches on that a little bit, and all this inner insecurity and stuff. So I love that song also because it's so stripped down. Like on this record, I brought in even more piano. I did more piano, and I did more instrumentation, and I'm a big fan of all of that. And this is pretty much the direction where I'm going even further into. So I really like the fact that it's not just guitars right in your face.
Yeah,
it's very broken down. It's bass, drums, the piano, the organ, and the vocals, and then the guitar comes in here and there, and it's just very dynamic song to me. So I like that. That one comes close to heart, and I love them all because they're all like my creations.
Yeah.
Reflections of the Dead is another one for me. I'm really happy on how people responded to that song. We did the video for that song. So very pleased with that. Believe in Something is a very cool song that I knew had to be the opening track after the soundscape, because it's just a little bit outside of our parameters from all the other records. A little bit more of a metal kind of vibe, but still doomy and gloomy, and still sounds like APHND. So that's a perfect example of a song that I had since for like a year. Like when I started in January, that song sat. I touched it. And I wasn't sure about that song for a little while, and then by the end of the year, it just all came together for me. And then when I did the lyrics and the melody that I came up with, I knew, okay, you know what? There's something really heavy about this song, and I think we need to open the record with this after the first soundscape. And so that's sometimes things just fall together when you least expect it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think I have no more questions before we close. Do you have any last words to our fans?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for hanging in there and listening. And I hope everyone enjoys the new album.
Yeah.
Most importantly, everyone needs to stay safe, because
That's
the world is very upside down. I'm hoping there's discussions of possibly, to do some festivals in the summer of 2022.
It would be great to see you in Europe again. I saw you in Hamburg.
Yeah, that's what.
So
we have some offers coming in, so we hope that something can be put together for July into August.
That's great.
Because again, I work for the school now, so I have the summer off. So I'm trying to do both now, and so I'm hoping that I get to come back to Europe sooner, eventually, because I've always loved coming to Europe. It really breaks my heart how the whole world has changed. And
that's true.
4 months ago, I thought maybe I was going to come in February, but it didn't look like it's possible. And the restrictions, and I could just ask all the fans to stay safe, take care of each other, do the right thing, be patient. Hopefully all your favorite bands will make it out. to play for you. And yeah, I think things have changed for everyone around the world pretty dramatically.
Definitely.
So I hope we get a little bit of what we used to have back at least.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can say the same. Stay safe as well, and hope to see you in Germany, in Hamburg specifically.
Hamburg?
Yes.
Awesome.
I come from
Awesome.
there, so
I
okay.
hope we make it out there too.
Yeah.
And please contact us with when you have this available and the link and everything. We could share it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time again, and have a nice day. And
Thank you.
hopefully see you in the near future.
Best of luck.
All
Best
right.
of luck.
Thank you. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.